Next up, we will be talking about the fascinating subject of identity, access, and transactions. Moderating the panel will be the prodigious Pradeep Gupta. Mr. Pradeep Gupta is the managing director of CMR India. CyberMedia Research has been a front runner in market research, consulting, and advisory services since 1986. He is also the chairman and managing director at CyberMedia India Limited, South Asia's leading specialty media house, which has a combined reader base of 1.5 million. He is a first generation entrepreneur and, along with his family, launched CyberMedia in 1982. He has been an industry veteran for over 30 years and is recognized for the key leadership role he has played in promoting the interests of the globally dispersed Indian IT industry. Pradeep completed his engineering from IIT Delhi in 1975, and he also holds a master's degree in business administration from IIM Calcutta 77. He is also the recipient of the Distinguished Alumni Award of IIT Delhi and many other industry accolades. Pradeep sir, handing it over to you.
Thank you very much, Tapish. And it's great to be here. And as a former chairman of PAN IIT, I'm so very happy that we have put together this fantastic show. And I think the IITs can definitely take a lead in terms of pointing the direction in which technology is going and how different kind of things are going to change. And as part of that, identity becomes something which is very important. And I've got a fantastic panel with me today to discuss the various issues that arise connected with the identity. I have Prakash Kumar, who is the CEO of Wadhwani Institute for Technology and Policy. Prakash is a very unique combination of a person who has been in government, and then after that, he also was in the private sector. So he has worked with various multinationals. And his last stint before he moved to the Wadhwani Institute was in terms of implementing. He was the CEO of the GST rollout that Prime Minister Modi undertook, and a very successful rollout indeed. Literally seamless way in which GST was ushered in the country. I have Prashant Pitti, the founder of Ease My Trip. It's the second largest travel portal now in India. Recently, they did their IPO. Incidentally, a unique thing about Ease My Trip is that it is the first consumer internet company which has not taken external funding, has gone straight for the IPO, and has become a unicorn. So that's indeed a great achievement, Prashant. And third, I have Gautam Goradia, CEO of COM-SUR. And as COM-SUR says, the missing piece of CCTV. So, he ensures that the images that are getting captured on CCTV, actually, intelligence is put to everything that is done there. Very successful entrepreneur with a number of different implementation, whether it is in government or housing societies and so on in this area. So a fantastic panel, and welcome to all of you. And I look forward to a very interesting next 40 minutes of discussions. I will start with Prashant. And my first question is that, can you share with us the importance of identity, and especially in light of the GST experience? Identity is important. I mean, all of us, when we are born, we have a name, and then you see the same kind of ID appearing here in front of us on this Zoom screen. We have ration cards. We have different kind of identities that are available to us. And, thanks to for example, the Aadhaar coming in, UP discovered that there were 90 lakh fake ration cards and so on. So, identity is something which is very important. But can you, Prakash, throw some light on the importance of this?
I'm assuming...
Yeah, he corrected that. That was for me. It happens, Prashant, Prakash get interchanged.
Sorry, my mistake, Prakash.
Yeah, thank you, Pradeep ji, and thank you, Pan IIT, for giving me this opportunity. As you mentioned rightly, uniquely identifying any entity, whether in a database or for a government in any particular scheme, is very, very important. Initially, it was paper-based, and hence uh, it was done at different levels, even right up to the district level. And the first attempt to bring some kind of automation and identity was election photo identity card. But then that had a problem. It was based for parliamentary constituency and assembly segment. The real first one with national footprint was PAN, the permanent account number, which income tax gave. But then it was based on demographic data. So there were a large number of cases where people could get the same person had, of course, by giving different names and all for themselves in different areas, and they were able to get more than one PAN. It's the Aadhaar which came with demographic and biometric both put together, which actually helped us to get something by which any individual can identify himself or herself. So that's the journey which has been. And of course, as you mentioned, that has become the de facto identification factor or entity for all individuals. Similarly, for businesses, it's the PAN which has remained. And for companies, unfortunately, the number is very, very small, just 1.5 million. Whereas all the businesses registered with GST itself is 13 million. And if you just before this session, we heard the person was talking about 60 million businesses in our country. So we have this chain of identities. And now what has happened, almost all of them, businesses especially use PAN at the base, whether it is GST or ESIC or EPFO or bank, mutual fund, all of them. And at the back end, what they have done some arrangement to validate that or seed with Aadhaar. So when next, maybe I'll be able to explain it better.
Yeah. So over to you, Gautam. The face as the identity. Okay. That is the business that you are in, that when you have the CCTV, it is the face that is captured. So, would you like to just share something about face as identity?
Yeah, thank you, Pradeep ji. Thank you, Pan IIT, for the opportunity. Good morning and Jai Hind, everyone. So, Pradeep ji, since this section also bears relevance to India, and from the perspective of what we've built over these years, I think the word identity, which has a very broad connotation, India itself can create now its own identity in terms of giving a direction to global governments, okay, as to how this very visually rich source of information can be put to good use to make a safer world. But coming back to your moot question on the face. So the face, normally known as, in this industry, known as facial recognition. This is the terminology that is normally used in this industry. So facial recognition can have various kinds of connotations. It can be as varied as identification required to board an aircraft, which I'm sure Prashant may touch upon at some point, to, from my perspective or from what we've developed, to identifying a perpetrator of a crime or a potential perpetrator. So unfortunately, we can't put facial identity or facial recognition in a single basket. There will be many connotations. Now, if you look at facial recognition from a surveillance point of view, which is where I come from, video surveillance, we need to consider several factors, including the major backlash in terms of privacy issues, and also in terms of the fact that many countries are banning facial recognition. So if you see the United States also, where there are huge number of solution providers, but San Francisco was one of the first ones to ban facial recognition. And while huge investments have been made within this technology also by governments and law enforcement agencies today, the fact of the matter is that it's beginning to kind of fail, or the challenges are beginning to increase even because of COVID, because you can buy a mask on Amazon, okay, for $200, and that facial recognition software will never be able to recognize you. And you will not even, nobody will ever be able to even ask you as to why are you wearing this big mask. So there are these challenges. And you may remember that there was a case in 2018 when 28 senators from the US were incorrectly recognized. So lots of challenges with facial recognition, not that it's a wrong.
So essentially you are saying that face as an identity is going to have a lot of challenges. And
absolutely.
We need to look at perhaps biometric is a better solution.
Yes.
But let me come to you, Prashant, and sorry for that error earlier. So, obviously, Ease My Trip, you need to track the identity of the people, right? Mm-hmm. Those who are coming to your site and booking a ticket, booking a travel experience, and so on. How do you track identity?
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show, firstly. At Ease My Trip, of course, identity means almost everything for our organization. Since we have to serve that consumer, we have to retrieve his information, we have to present him a better way to travel. We call it as customer identity and access management, which is CIAM. It's a very, very strong feature for any online travel technology space. And we take CIAM very seriously. And the way we track consumers is basically either by his cell phone or either by his device or either by his social login IDs and also the cookies. On the basis of that, we track the consumers and we keep adding their consumer behaviors, their travel itineraries, their geolocation, their coordinates into that identity to be able to serve them better. And later on, we are doing data mining, keeping the historical records of the customers and applying algorithms on cookies, their coordinates, and social media score to serve them better.
Great. So, we've looked at identity in terms of an individual, in terms of a business, in terms of the face, and in terms of as a customer. And therefore, let's now look at the benefits. What is the benefit that arises out of this? And again, let me move back to you, Prakash. Aadhaar and GST, you talked about these two as individual and corporate identities. But you also talked about the linkage between PAN and Aadhaar, as well as PAN card and GST. Right? Now, what kind of benefits do we see arising out of all of these?
So first of all, why this linking was done in case of PAN and Aadhaar was to ensure that one PAN is unique and no one can have more than one. In fact, when they started seeding Aadhaar, they were able to identify a large number of such cases, which were issued for the same individual. Now, why that is required? Because income tax needs our data, not only from what employer pays us, but also what interest we get in our banks, the other benefits which we like you sell your mutual fund or you sell your shares, all that has to come. And that we all must be seeing that in Form 26A. So we needed one unique identifier for each individual. And that's where the PAN comes. And at the back end, they said, okay, just one time seed it, validate, don't store that data with Aadhaar because that has other ramifications. Now, PAN, the CBDT gives this as an API for validation to almost all government agencies, like GST gets that. So as and when an application is filed, we use that. And similarly, GSTN gives APIs to all business entities to come and validate. In fact, One is through around 50 GST Suvidha provider. They are the fintech companies through whom you can get this service, where it will be automated. Or individually, one can come to the portal and put a PAN or a GST and you can verify. You can get lots of data about the entity with whom you're going to do business. So this is basically for the benefit of our people who are there, how they can make use of this ecosystem. So the benefit is unique identification, and then Aadhaar. Lots of us, we don't have, if you remove Aadhaar, it's very difficult to prove our identity. Who am I? Especially and then earlier government used to ask you to submit attested copies and all that document. That has all gone. You just say, okay, this is my Aadhaar, give your number, give a finger ring, and then that's done. Biometrically, you are verified. Or there are other ways of doing it. Lots of people try to game Aadhaar, but then it is based on biometric and demographic. So some people like Prashant and I joined hand together, his left hand and my right hand. People tried that. Of course, we couldn't do it left eye and right eye, but all such combinations, they were basically identified. And that's the way it has just established. It's a different matter that there are certain limitations on how we can use this in applications today. But wherever government benefits are going, it is there. And for PAN, it has been allowed and it's being used. Sum and substance, these services are not only available for government entities to make use of for validating, but they are also now being extended to businesses and other entities, of course, through certain mechanism for auto validation of whether it is Aadhaar or it is PAN or GST or even SIN.
Right. Incidentally, I'm getting some questions on the pitfalls of this, and let me share with my audience that we are right now talking about the benefits, but then we are going to move to the important issue of the various checks and balances and what are the kind of pitfalls which are there. So just hold on for a minute about that. So, coming to you, Prashant, you talked about cookies and, tracking the customer and therefore trying to find out what their what places they've traveled to, what kind of experiences they've gone through. So, how does it translate into a better customer experience? And what are the steps that you do in ensuring that they get a better customer experience?
Well, to be honest, the user experience without tracking the way we see the world right now, the way online companies are performing, without tracking a consumer experience, it won't be possible. To give you an idea, if we are able to track consumer correctly, we can offer them one-click buy button, right? Where all his information is logged into a right place and he can purchase as quickly as possible without too much of an hindrance in between. We can curate what all things we want to show to him in the first place on the basis of his past behavior, in the basis of his liking, disliking, travel pattern, their lifestyle, food, social, and cultural interest. And on the basis of that, we are able to offer consumer a better service and grow our organization. We try to track and keep all the data correlated in one single window and analyze them. And on the basis of this, we are able to do a better job in pre and post sales customer service and offer a great memorable experience to the consumer.
Right. And so that coming to you, Gautam, share with me the benefits. You talked about surveillance. You talked about the fact that, CCTV you are actually looking at. And as your company says that you're actually building the missing piece of CCTV. So what really is that missing piece?
Yeah.
Which is important, and how does that entire thing benefit us as
Sure. So I'm glad that we are speaking of benefits, Pradeep. There is a Motorola report I'd be happy to share with anyone who likes, that by the end of, by 2025, perhaps maybe 2026 or 27 because of COVID, we will have 45 billion cameras on the face of this earth. Billion. So that's approximately 6 cameras per person. So think about the amount of very visually rich information that is coming in. And if any of you go to our website, COM-SUR.biz, you will see that we've made a very strong statement that is the reality today, that instead of the various kinds of benefits that people can get from this visually rich source of information, this information, Pradeep, is just converting into garbage. Now, from this video, whether it's crime prevention, loss prevention, reduction of crime, better operational efficiency, health and safety issues, all of this can be achieved very easily, including the world's first and newest profession of CCTV video footage auditors. So nobody is looking at CCTV video as a standard operating procedure anywhere in the world today. And they're trying to automate everything, which is good. But when it comes to video surveillance, the exceptions can be so many, including the unexpected ones, that you have to spend some time, the user has to spend some time looking at the video himself or herself, because users have the best of situation awareness. And basically what our technology has done is it crunches the data so beautifully without missing anything, that it can show you 24 hours of footage, multiple cameras in as little as 24 minutes in a day or even lesser. So we are saying, just like you look at your photographs on your mobile phone after you've shot, say, 100 photos, why are you not looking at CCTV? It carries so much information and it will allow you. So that's the first missing piece, is nobody thought about auditing. Nobody thought about taking terabytes of data and making it into gigabytes, which we can do beautifully, so that the police will never have problems, even if the recorder is stolen. And the third missing piece, Pradeep, just 10 more seconds. Third missing piece is standardizing incident reports across the world, which the software creates almost automatically in PowerPoint, which then starts giving you business intelligence. So there's so much we can do only if we take that little trouble of making optimal use of this information.
That's a great point. And I think, you brought out that it's not just for crime, but also incidents. So if there
Absolutely.
are that happen, wrong usages, I think that's a very, very important point. But now let's come to the pitfalls. And I will start this time with you, Prashant. You just now said that, we can't give a better customer experience unless we have all this information together in one place. But do you lose any sleep over the fact that, somebody can hack into your data? What is the data vulnerability that is there? This data, and by the way, there is a question that has come from the audience, which says, why don't you keep, all the data about education, health, driving license, etc., in one place? Why should there be multiple numbers? Why not one number? But that increases data vulnerability. So is it a good idea to keep everything in one place? What is your take on, I've raised multiple issues to you, Prashant. What's your take on this?
Sure. Well, we have been in this business for last 13 years now. And thankfully, and touch wood, we have never had an incident so far. The reason is that we take data, security as utmost protection. We understand the vulnerability it can have when somebody's trusting us to share their data with us, their travel patterns, their payment gateways, their payment methods and everything. So being an online business, it's our first priority to keep customer data information in protected environment. We have taken all measures and compliances as for the consumer data protection and privacy is concerned. Our infrastructure, application, and data is fully protected. We are PCI DSS and ISO 2700 certified company. And we frequently conduct internal and external IT assessments. The IT auditing, which is authorized to provide these services, are used. We also follow country-specific data protection policies like GDPR, and our infrastructure and platform is running on zero trust cloud security environment. So we of course have to keep a very strong vigilant eye towards the data security, but we're following the best of the procedures which are available in these given times.
Yeah, but even the best of the companies have had data leakages, databases being stolen and so on.
Correct. So the way we are looking at it is we are having multiple, IT assessment companies, whether it's external or internal, and have multiple tier layer of systems in place by which, such leakages do not happen. It's basically a matter of putting time and effort into it. And we have a separate team looking into it who work very vigilantly. In fact, one thing which we have done is that it cost us a little bit of effort in terms of running business smoothly, but I think it should be followed everywhere. Is that to use our data and system, I cannot access it. Even I, being one of the co-founders, cannot access it from any other place besides our office location. So it's that strongly protected.
Wonderful to hear that. Gautam, you talked about privacy. You talked about San Francisco having privacy-related laws, and California having. Now, privacy is something that is, the moment we talk of identity, this becomes a very important issue. What sort of regulations do you think should be there in this area? What is it that the consumer should feel safe about when it comes to the issue of identity?
Yeah. So, very sensitive issue, Pradeep. And I see many taglines on companies that say, feel safe. I think the angle should not be about feeling safe. The angle should be about being safe. No? So the feel, that's a feel good factor. We don't want a feel good factor. We want to be safe. And
you're right. Sorry to interrupt. But yeah, I do understand that, lots of crimes have been because of the fact that CCTVs have been available. Most colonies today have CCTV on the roads. There are a number of CCTVs which are there. In London, they say that you get photographed 300 times in a day, right? But isn't that an intrusion on my privacy?
Well, why go to London, Pradeep, where you are? Delhi happens to be the largest number of CCTV installations per square mile in the world.
Really?
And the funny part and the irony is, day before yesterday, there was a report from the NCRB that the maximum number of crimes are taking place in Delhi. May not to get me wrong, may not directly relate to CCTV, but the fact of the matter still goes back to the same thing, that unless we make optimal use of CCTV, we will remain where we are. So it is not just about adding cameras. But to answer your question, see, video is very different from when you trust your emails and your data to be on somebody else's server. With video, we have to be a lot more careful, because visual information gets processed by the human brain much faster. And you must be careful from the starting point. So what type of camera are you using? Now, vendors will tell you, go ahead, you need to have IP cameras and so on. But they will not tell you that terrorist organizations like ISIS have tried to take over cameras and hack cameras so that they can plan the next move. So you have to ensure that you can't be lured just because technology sounds fancy, Pradeep. You have to be very careful about these issues, because the unfortunate part is, when we hear of things that sound great, everybody wants to jump onto it, and governments wherever across the world must stop looking at L1 tender systems. So work with companies, homegrown companies, where you can have better control so that backdoor entries can stop. So that is my tool. I think.
But, technology has always been a double-edged sword. The same facial recognition technology is used by governments using drones to also shoot down the same terrorist organizations that you're talking about. So, it essentially works both ways. But I think there is a need for some sort of regulatory framework that must be available in terms of the right to privacy.
Absolutely.
That's something which is very, very essential. Prakash, you talked about the government benefits, but therefore, the lack of identity can also lead to denial of service, right? And similarly, my identity can be stolen by people. Earlier, when we were talking, you shared some interesting experiences of GST. So, can you sort of, walk us through this identity theft and denial of service?
So the first part, when you mentioned about service getting denied because you don't have Aadhaar, that has been solved in the sense that all the service agencies have been asked that if they can't provide, take other documents, whether it is election ID card or PAN or whatever they have, just to prove the identity. So that is not the one. And that came
these
after.
days, despite all these things, banks, when you go there for their KYC, will ask for the Aadhaar and still ask for two more things, your passport or driving license or something or the other. But anyway,
that's how they implement it. I'm not the person to talk about that. Let me come to the second one. That's very something which is unique, and I would like to share here. We Indians are very ingenious. I mean, we can come up with some jugaad to bypass the main thing. So GST registration, with a big departure, 3 working days, you get your registration. Just provide the details, and only PAN was validated, and you get registration. And some scrupulous guys, they used this and they created companies, made use of that, bought fake ITCs, shown some export, took the refund and the route. So later, when the investigation started and we looked into the details, we found that these guys, while creating the entity, and they were not companies, most of them were partnership. They had taken PAN of some unsuspecting guy, a young guy living in a slum, telling him that I'm giving you a job of food delivery service. You give me your PAN. And Aadhaar was not asked. And the bank account and all they had created already. And they used that for 3-4 months. These guys got some money, 15,000, 10,000 in their account. They were very happy. Bina kaam kiya ho gaya, paisa mil raha hai. And then they just vanished. And who are the guys caught? These guys. Now, after looking at that, that was a kind of identity theft. Of course, they got money, 10,000, 15,000, whatever per month for a few months. But they were not told for what purpose it's being given. And they said, I'm giving you a job, so give me your PAN card. Now, that's the time when government introduced, after 2 years of introduction in 2019, that we will now take Aadhaar as well for proprietorship. That was made mandatory just to ensure, because proprietorship is almost 2/3 of all the entities registered. Of course, they pay a much smaller tax. Taxes are paid most by the big companies. But then how do we ensure that these people, so that's Aadhaar came into as a big thing. So if you give Aadhaar, then your registration gets done faster. If they brought it in the law. If you don't give, you give other documents, then there's a longer period because the officer may like to check and see whether you are actually working from that location or not. Then when we did use machine learning to find out patterns of all the fraudulent cases, so we had a huge number of such cases where registrations were cancelled. And then we saw some beautiful patterns, some of the parameters which we had never thought could be common. Unfortunately, I can't disclose that, but that is what the technology brought us, and then we were able to, and those went into risk scoring engine for a new application coming in. If your risk is low, you get immediately. If your risk is little high, then you may get it, but someone will come and verify. So that's the way in GST, we have tried to ensure that identity theft doesn't take place. And company and all people generally don't do, because that there are so many places the documents go, so many places, always the partnership or the proprietorship. But proprietorship has been blocked. In partnership case also, they ask for Aadhaar of the partners if you want to get it done faster.
So a very quick question to you. I think people are also worried about government doing surveillance on its own citizens.
Okay, that's an excellent question. In fact, this canard was raised everywhere. Aadhaar validation, they don't ask from where it has come. They just give you back. Nothing is stored. In fact, they've been clearly given, and that's what they do. So my identity, in fact, one of the questions was, why don't you take everything at one place? Then I have your complete profile, which is not the case. Government shouldn't get into that. So Aadhaar, while validating, doesn't return. They do millions of validations every day. They don't store who had, for whom, nothing. The equivalent of what has been mentioned in one of the questions, that why don't we keep it and use blockchain, is DigiLocker, which government has provided that service where you can keep that. You don't need to carry your physical license or like driving license and registration certificate. You can write from there. You can put your many other certificates, school living, college and all that. And from there, you can authorize whomsoever you give consent can take from there. So that's already has come up. And that's the way, but this is very interesting. We always come up with something to bypass the main system. And there are people, and government always is a cat and mouse game. Yeah.
So, Gautam, let's talk about the AI ML future. There have been questions that have been coming saying that, people are worried about facial recognition, so therefore AI future.
So Pradeep, that's my favorite one. And while I'm not undermining any of these technologies, I have to point out a few facts, hard facts, but few facts. Number one, these technologies are never going to be used by one and all. So if there are 100 users across the world, 99.9999999% will not use these kind of fancy technologies. Number two, they come with a lot of baggage like processing needs and costs. And more importantly, these technologies like video analytics that came before AI and ML and so on, they can only discover what they have been programmed for. Okay, what about the rest? Number one. Number two, with the humongous amount of false alerts and false positives that these technologies send out, who decides whether the alerts are right or wrong? Human. So on one side, you are saying that we are going to take away the human angle and bring in AI, but finally it is the human who takes the call. Okay. So my mantra is very simple, Pradeep. AI when you need it, HI all the time.
All the time.
And
okay.
when it comes to video, it's a very different video surveillance, very different ball game. Your computer will beat somebody in a chess game, or maybe it will help a doctor say, okay, this guy seems to have COVID, or he's got cancer, and so on. But video surveillance, the exceptions can be too many. Permutation combinations can be too many. Okay,
right.
Including, as I said, the unexpected ones. So the human angle, please, I request everybody who is thinking of new system, old system, adding AI, go ahead, do it. It's not wrong.
Absolutely.
Please don't forget, you will also have lots of biases with AI. So the data, the training models, the data has to be very strong. That is one of the things that our software does, is that it allows a user to train on very relevant data.
Great, absolutely great. And Prashant, there's a question which says, how can scams like OLX can be secured by a newbie e-commerce company? I'm building a C2C e-commerce app. Please guide me in terms of data identities and so on. And your take on how the travel industry is going to transform.
Well, firstly, answering the question which you asked related to somebody building a C2C company, be extremely vigilant of how do you store data, where do you store the data, and how secure the systems are. Usually the cloud companies like Azure, AWS, Google, they are doing a pretty good job at it. You'll have to hire somebody who's basically an expert in this field to understand, to get a very good grip at it. So, it's a tough road out there. The hackers are getting smart every day. And, the scammers are utilizing the vulnerability of people to the maximum capabilities. And hence, the things were actually quite simpler 10 years ago when there wasn't that many hacking attempts. But now, every day, EaseMyTrip sees at least 5 or 6 hacking attempts, which we have to undo, and which we have been continuing to do for the last 13 years. So definitely things are getting difficult, and now the proactive approach needs to be taken by any company, whether it's a startup, young company, or even in the ideation stage, to take this matter extremely seriously. Because once you lose a reputation, it's very hard to rebuild. within the user base. Talking about the next thing which you asked, what do we see as travel as a future? So to be honest, I see flying cars with autonomous, the autonomously flying cars, the vehicles on the road, maybe a decade from now. Decade is probably also too much. It probably could happen even sooner. Imagine a world where the number of physical hotels are far too less. Imagine a world when you land from Bombay to Delhi, but you have to go to Bathinda, and then there is a pod which comes at the Delhi airport, which picks you and takes you to Bathinda, and that pod does not have any driver. The pod has just a bed and a television and of course the bathrooms and everything for your services. So you actually avoid staying in a hotel in a night in Delhi, and that pod just picks you at the airport and takes you to your location and then goes for charging afterwards automatically. So this is the kind of world we are seeing where everything will be on demand, everything will be consumer centric. Right now, infrastructures. There's one very good talk by one of the professors from IIT Madras that how we should de-infrastructure now. The developed nations, have been building huge infrastructures, and developing nations like ours are kind of copying that. But we can actually get away from that and do something even bigger and better without using too much of an infrastructure, where each and every service is actually linked to human usage, and it's basically on demand on what they want and where they want. Mm-hmm. So we believe that the future is amazing for the travel space. We as company, we are already using a chatbot, which is solving 37% of our queries. Imagine we had a team of about 230 people in our operations department. Now we have a team of 120 people thanks to the chatbot, which we're using already. So this is how the future is already coming in. The future is coming very fast. We believe that the facial recognition will surely be used to provide much less experience to people who are going to be staying in a flight, going for a flight or staying in a hotel.
That's a great vision of the future. I'm told that our time is up, but one very quick question to you, Prashant. How do you see, government is building this health stack. How do you see identity working out in the health stack? Because that's my personal data, which I may not want even to share with other people in the family. So very quick 1 minute response.
So to be honest, I also...
No, sorry, this is for Prakash.
Prakash.
So Pradeep ji, currently we have unique IDs for different hospitals, whether it is Max or for Fortis or Medanta, whichever you use. Tomorrow, the idea basically here is that all of us get one unique health ID, but that's not going to be only Aadhaar. So they are allowing us to use multiple and create one health ID. Now the advantage is wherever I am, and if I need to meet a doctor and I give consent to that doctor, the doctor should be able to pull all my records. That's the ultimate aim. So this work has already started on pilot basis in Chandigarh and few other union territories. The idea is they will take it further. The storage will continue to be decentralized. Only the metadata will be at one place, so that based on your consent.
Control is in my hand.
Yes. And another important part is not the entire data. You can control what you want to give. Suppose I had passed a particular disease like tuberculosis, and I don't want to give it when I go to my orthopedic surgeon. So I can only say, okay, anything related with orthopedic thing only, I'll allow him to put. And he will consume, and then it doesn't reside at his system. So that's the way it is going on.
Sure. So with that, I'm sorry we have run out of time. So I would like to thank my panelists, Prakash, Prashant, and Gautam. Excellent discussion today. And I think, very clearly, this aligns with the overall theme of this session, which is that we need to be smart, but we also need to be secure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pradeep ji.
Thank you.